guys, welcome back to Loft Sports. I'm Tyler.
I'm Seth.
Today we're going to be coming at you with a college coaching carousel video. So we're going to be talking college football coaches.
Yep.
These are coaches we either need to see something from, could be in line to be fired, or may have the potential to upgrade to a better job at the end of the season. But please continue to like our page on Facebook, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, comment with video recommendations you'd like to see, and as always, trash talk is welcome. First coach you want to talk about?
You know, I want to start it off, Chip Kelly at UCLA. I mean, what he did at Oregon pretty much revolutionized the way college football is played, more of these modern spread offenses. Took a lot of what Chip Kelly did and kind of took their own spin on it. Him at UCLA is very intriguing because he's dominated that conference before. I got to see a little bit more from him in year two, though. It seemed like watching UCLA last year, he was almost okay with it being a bad year. I need some of that competitiveness from him. I need to see something more.
It is only his second year, though. I will say that. And I think he realized he had Spate as his quarterback. That's not the kind of quarterback to run his system. So I think Kelly deserves a little more time. I don't think he should be on the short list for this year. I agree they need to take a next step, but I think making a bowl game would be good enough.
Sure, I'm not saying he needs to have a great year. I'm just saying that we need to see more of the Chip Kelly team that was at Oregon than what we saw last year, just from an intrigue standpoint, because that could, if he can get that going again, UCLA is all of a sudden a contender in that conference for years to come.
Very, very possible. All right, who's next on your list?
I mean, Willie Taggart at FSU. I mean, gosh, I need to see more from him. There's too much talent there for the year they had. I don't care what you had to replace, injuries, culture, too much talent there for the year that they had. In-game management was lacking a lot in key moments. Where do you see him?
I agree. Willie Taggart, I don't think he's the quality coach Florida State needs. He had one season at Oregon, and I don't think they did anything special. No. Disappointing first year. I don't think he's on the hot seat in year two. No, but if they have a 500, 7-5 year, it's going to get hot down there quick because they were running Jimbo out of town, and he brought him a natty. So that fan base is very impatient. I think he needs to be aware that things are going to change drastically. They love him. They embrace him. He's an FSU guy. But that will all change if the success doesn't follow. So I agree with that. Next on the list, I have Fuentes as one of our coaches to talk about. Don't want to spend too much time on it, but Virginia Tech should have a say in the Coastal this year. A lot of returners on both sides of the ball. He's had some success there, but I think this is a job where Beamer did such a good job there. I think Vautech fans almost expect maybe more than they should.
I can see that. I mean, I always said for years watching Bo Pelini at Nebraska that I don't want him to just be the next Frank Beamer. So I could see that in there. It's one thing to win 9-10 games. I mean, they won a lot of games there under Beamer, but they never took necessarily that next step. And I think that's what the Virginia Tech fan base and that program's been wanting, is that next step to compete on, not just in a Coastal, not in an ACC, but on a national scale. And Fuentes has shown flashes of it, but you got to see more if they want to get to that stage. And I think that's where Virginia Tech fans are. Maybe not a top 5, but I think they want to be around the top 10.
And they've been there, but not with Fuentes. And that's what I'm saying. He needs to get them back to where they belong in their eyes, which is playing in New Year's Six bowls. Next on the list, I'll let you run with this one because it's a Big Ten name.
Yeah, I mean, James Franklin at Penn State, I know he's had success. So when you want to say, what do you actually need to see from him? Because he came in a tough situation. I get all that. But he lost Trace McSorley. He lost Saquon Barkley. And when he lost Saquon, he's an amazing player. One of the best running backs in the NFL as a rookie. So, of course, it's going to be hard to replace that. But it was a notable drop-off for Penn State last year. And now they lost Trace McSorley too. And I just need to see if Franklin can continue it without two of the more elite players in that conference at the skill set positions. How well has he recruited? How well has his culture been developed? How has he been developing the younger players over the last couple years? I need to see that because I think he has the potential to keep Penn State in that conversation is on the national scale. I just need to see him do it without the elite players there. What else do you need to say about
Here's my thing on James Franklin. Few are better at recruiting players. He's an elite recruiter. Yep. Penn State has been in the discussion. They won a conference championship.
Yes.
The following year, they won the Fiesta Bowl against Washington. They finished 9 wins last year. Disappointing bowl result against an underwhelming Kentucky team.
Yeah.
But this is going to be his judgment day.
I agree.
He does not have McSorley. He's going to have to prove that he can recruit a quarterback and develop these players. His in-game management is terrible. I could spend 10 minutes alone on the Ohio State ending of that game.
Yeah.
That's 2 years in a row they have had Ohio State dead to rights and let that slip away. You call 2 timeouts to run a draw on 4th and 6, and it's not like they had Barkley to give the ball to.
Yeah.
I need to see more from James Franklin. Penn State, he's got them back to where they need to be, but if they want to win another Big Ten title and make a playoff push, I need to see more.
I'll talk really briefly on our next one because I'll ramble for 10 minutes, but my guy, Scott Frost at Nebraska, I'll just say it is what it is. He was the National Coach of the Year. Everyone knows what he did at UCF. 4-8 last year is not good enough for a coach of that caliber, and definitely not good enough for my Cornhuskers. That's all I'm going to say. I'm expecting to see a lot from him, but I know you probably got some different takes than I do. What are your kind of thoughts on him?
Let me come at this from a neutral standpoint.
Yeah, before I just homer it up.
Nebraska has struggled the last 2 decades, but still, with their tradition and their history, a 4-8 campaign, even in a first year, is unacceptable.
Agreed.
Losing at home to Troy is unacceptable.
With the 3rd-string quarterback, but still.
I don't care.
I know.
I don't care. It's unacceptable. Nebraska is better than that, and if he is going to be the savior of this program, which everybody is lining him up
our
to be,
fan base needs him to be that.
If he's going to be the savior of this program, I need to see at least the record flipped, maybe more than that.
Yeah.
But listen, he's a good recruiter. Can he get talent to Lincoln? We'll see. This is an important year because next year the schedule is much tougher. All your big games are at home. This is a huge season for Scott Frost.
One other thing I want to just mention here as far as Scott Frost is Nebraska, when they were rolling under Osborne, they did 2 things better than anybody else in the country. They outfought and outworked their opponents, and they developed at a higher rate than anybody in the country. We used to take walk-ons that turned into all Big 8 and Big 12 performers. I'm not saying that needs to be the same blueprint. I'm just looking at guys that have been on the roster for a few years. Like, this is going to be more maybe for the Nebraska fans, but someone like Alex Davis, who we've heard flashes of forever as a pass rusher, who barely has sacks. Can he get to like 4 or 5 sacks? Just guys taking that next level jump that Nebraska hasn't seen in a long time. We have been awful at developing players. That's kind of just something I'm looking for, is guys that have been in the program a couple years that he didn't necessarily recruit. How much better have they gotten? I think that's going to be a good barometer of just how sustainable his program could be. I'll leave it at that.
We'll move on because I think there's going to be some videos that come
for sure.
These Nebraska debates. But last one on the C from list, Pruitt at Tennessee. Tennessee, like Nebraska, is a blue-collar job. Tennessee hasn't had the success Nebraska has over the history of college football, but there's certainly, when we were growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, this was a program that was going to knock you in the mouth, and they were physical, and they put talent in the NFL. They have been atrocious. 2 years ago, no wins in the SEC. That is not something that Tennessee should deal with.
The fan base deserves better.
They deserve better. Pruitt was like their 9th coaching hire choice because so many other people turned down the job. He needs to get Tennessee back to at least somewhat relevant so that Tennessee can upgrade and move on.
I'll agree with that. Been talking about coaches we need to see something from. Let's keep it in the SEC here and switch it up and talk about a coach who could possibly be in his last year at Auburn, Gus Malzahn. I mean, we've talked about him a couple times. I know we've had a lot of conversations. He had a couple really great years. was it Nick Marshall that was his quarterback?
Yeah, that was one of them.
He hasn't been able to find that guy who can truly run his system as a running threat, and that's kind of hurt him. He's got a freshman quarterback. It could be a recipe for disaster with a fan base who, once you give them that taste of success, they need it more often than what he's provided. I don't know how you see it, but I mean, he could be in his last year there.
I think he will be fired at the end of the season, but he's definitely on the hot seat. I mean, he's beaten Alabama a couple times, and I think Auburn fans need to pump the brakes on what their expectations and reality really are.
But we do know, we've seen it in the past at other places where expectations of a fan base can drive a coach out, maybe undeserved.
Well, what he has going for him is that Auburn just gave him a ridiculous extension.
And
so
he does have a freshman quarterback that could always be an excuse as well.
Well, the buyout in itself is scary for any AD, and boosters are going to have to come up with that money to pay him if they choose to let him go. But disappointing offensively the last several years. He's an offensive guy. Their defense has been very good, but there just hasn't been that bridge. And I think at the end of the day, I think he's probably going to face a rough year. They got a tough schedule. They got Oregon. They got LSU and Alabama. And even if they come to Auburn, Alabama's way more talented. It's a tough division, and I think he's probably going to be out at the end of the year.
Sticking in that same vein, I also look at a guy like Clay Helton at USC.
How does he have that?
How does he even, one, how did he get the damn thing? And then two, how does he still have it? I mean, this is US freaking C. They are one of the traditional top 3 to 5 college football programs that you think of. A name like Clay Helton, with his resume, doesn't not belong. It does not. It's more of a job at Fresno State than USC.
Yeah, I agree there. USC is, if they have the right coach, you saw what Pete Carroll was able to build there, a lengthy dynasty.
Absolutely, whether he paid for it or not.
Well, whether that, I mean, they could have had that talent regardless.
They could have.
USC. You point in any direction, you got 5 stars laying in wait. So I think Clay Helton, if they don't win the South, he's probably gone. And even if they win the South and they lose a lot of games, he could still find himself on the way out. He's got JT Daniels. JT Daniels is a great quarterback. He needs to put a good season together. Speaking of rivals of my Fighting Irish, I think the hottest seat in most people's mind is Jim Harbaugh.
Which is crazy to think that his seat could be the hottest, but I don't necessarily know if it's the hottest to start the season, but when we're talking about the one that could just create an inferno, it's there in Ann Arbor with Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I honestly, if you haven't caught our Big Ten video, I think he's losing to their 3 big rivals this year. I think they do lose to Notre Dame. I think Michigan State gets them again, and they lose to Ohio State. And Michigan has proven that they don't care about wins if you're not beating Ohio State and you're not competing and winning Big Ten championships. That's what Michigan wants. Harbaugh really hasn't delivered that to him yet, and they're paying him way too much. I think he's second in the country under Saban in salary to not produce. The recruiting classes have been there. The schedule, it's a good time to be in the Big Ten right now. If you're one of those elite programs who can recruit, if he loses those 3 games, that seat's going to be an inferno.
There's no excuse.
There's not.
Your 3 biggest rivals all at home. Your only really challenging road game is early enough in the season at Wisconsin. That shouldn't be an issue. Wisconsin's going to have a young quarterback. There's no excuse. If there was ever a year to get Ohio State with a first-year quarterback or a first-year quarterback that transferred
and a first-year coach,
this is it. Urban Meyer's gone. You get him at home. You should at least make it 11-1 and win the East, at least. If it doesn't have to make the playoff to keep his job, but he needs to beat Ohio State to get that monkey off his back. But he needs to at least win 2 out of the 3 games against their big rivals. They all come to Michigan. There's no excuse.
I think it's in his head, too. We saw what happened in San Francisco where that team just imploded on him. And I think it's in his head with Ohio State. At Big Ten Media Days, he's taking jabs at Urban Meyer about how controversy follows everywhere he goes. I mean, you better watch it before Ryan Day, who's not Urban Meyer, beats you. I mean, he's just got to focus on his program. I think he's too worried about all this outside stuff. I think it gets to him. I think it got to him in San Francisco. I think it's going to get to him here. And it could be bad if it goes down like that. It could be really bad.
He's got a returning quarterback. This has got to be the season they take a next step.
It does.
Plain and simple. Plain and simple.
Speaking of next steps,
yep.
Let's talk about some coaches who could potentially make that bigger jump that we talked about from somewhere that maybe Group of 5, Power 5, bottom barrel, Power 5 to a better job. I mean, who are some guys you got there?
The first person that comes to my mind is Matt Campbell at Iowa State.
Sure.
Auburn has reached into the Cyclone pit before. That's where they got Gene Chizik from.
Yeah.
Very possible that they pull Matt Campbell out of Ames. If Iowa State wins 9-10 games this year with the talent that they get in Ames, Iowa, this dude is going to be on a short list for some serious jobs.
I actually... I'm sorry to cut you off there. I actually really like Matt Campbell as the next coach at USC.
I think that's possible too.
I really like that. I think he fits that profile. If he can add another solid year at Iowa State to his resume, and now he's going to have to get some help recruiting because he's not used to at a big job recruiting like that. But success is the best recruiter that a coach can have. I agree with you. He's one of those coaches that could... This is first on the list for a lot of people.
I agree. And speaking of USC, a former USC coach, Lane Kiffin,
yeah.
Florida Atlantic is not going to keep him for long. He's going to get another shot at a Power 5 conference.
He's had his chances and he's failed. Let's be honest. When he was at USC, he just wasn't ready. He spent time under
arrogant.
Spent time under Nick Saban at Alabama. He's been a head coach again here, and he's having good success. His offenses are putting up numbers. I look at him as someone who could potentially have a big job.
Speaking of putting up numbers, Braum at Purdue turned down the Louisville job. If they have another good season, the way he's recruiting these talented players, if he can get those kind of guys to West Lafayette, what could he do at a big-time job?
Yeah, I mean, another guy that's kind of coming to mind in that same vein, you look at Bronco Mendenhall at Virginia. I know they got a little bit better recruiting around him potentially, but what he's doing there so far is really impressive, and you saw what he did at BYU.
Yep.
His career resume...
He's very underrated.
I'm not saying a USC job, but maybe one of those second-tier Power 5 jobs he's right in line for something like that potentially.
I agree there. And then the last person that I can think of, Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. He was the interim at Ohio State for a year.
Sure.
Didn't have a lot of success, but he came back under Urban Meyer.
Yep.
He's been at Cincinnati. This will be his third year. They won 11 games. They went 4-8, then 11-2. If they have another double-digit win season, I would be surprised if people aren't knocking on the door to try to get him. Cincinnati has produced Butch Jones, Mark D'Antonio, and Brian Kelly.
Yep.
Those are some pretty good coaches that have moved on to bigger jobs and for the most part had success at those jobs.
Two people I just want to throw out real quick, don't want to spend too much time on it. Bob Stoops, if he wants to get back into coaching, a job like potentially a USC could lure him in. And I look at where Urban Meyer is going to coach next. You saw it at Florida, weaseled his way out of a situation. Oh, my heart is what he was pulling. And then 1 year later, he's coaching at Ohio State. Ohio State, a lot of scandal, controversy there. He resigns. I mean, we've seen this from Urban Meyer before. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying we've seen it. And where could he potentially, if USC does fire their coach and USC comes calling to Urban Meyer, it might be worth it to him. I mean, those are just two names that aren't necessarily on a lot of people's minds that I think potentially should be.
All right, that's going to wrap up our Coaching Carousel video. Please continue to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. This is Loft Sports signing off.